Real money?
Where's David?
Sick.
Oh, was he?
Apparently, yeah.
Yes, I didn't know he was away.
Yeah.
So there you go.
Oh, apparently sick.
You're doing many others.
This comes out for 2019 and our class goes on for 6 weeks.
I was going to say 29 would be best. 6 weeks.
Yes. Good evening, and thank you to those in the audience for attending on this, what I guess is really the first real fall evening and day. So we can sense the weather is turning, but council seems to be in reasonably good spirit tonight. I think it's because we're recognizing a lot of folks, and there's no clerk. This is the most exciting moment of my life. There is no clerk present. We could really do some things. However, we have to wait for the clerk to be present before we can proceed. So, I'm not going to pretend anything other than we're going to have an awkward, silent little moment here. There's a public meeting coming on snow removal, which I would encourage every single resident in the city to attend and pay attention to. There's, a new and improved system of snow removal. It will see pretty much everybody's street cleared within 48 hours of the last snowfall, and I think it's going to be a much better experience than the uncomfortable experience that we had last year. Much more streamlined process, and certainly an opportunity to understand it better going in. Where are the clerks?
Hiding.
There they are. Thank you. While we're waiting for the clerks to, we almost started without you. I know. I was reminded. There's also the Owen Sound City Transit 3-route system, the public consultation process. First meeting is next Monday, October 28th at 2:30 at the Bayshore Community Center. City manager will be facilitating that meeting, and there'll be a great opportunity for members of the public to identify specific origins, link-ups, and other destinations within the city they would like to see the transit system stop and pick up at. So it really is an opportunity to have some direct input into that, that new 3-route system. That's the first of 2 public meetings, and certainly something that we're encouraging everyone, particularly the users of transit, to attend. Okay. You were here for the earlier rehearsal. We're now officially in the open session of council, and we're in our regular meeting. I'll invite everyone here this evening to join me in a moment of silent reflection, please. Thank you. Are there any additional items tonight? Members of council? Councillor Purdon?
Yes, Your Worship, I would like to make an announcement about a Welcoming Communities Forum on November 8th.
Councillor Wright?
I just have a question about a letter that I'm hoping we sent out about 3 weeks ago or longer than that ago, and whether we've had an answer.
On what subject can we send a lot of letters? Amalgamation. Okay. Councillor Twaddle, did you?
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. I have information about 2 upcoming public meetings. One is the one that you mentioned briefly, the One is the snow removal meeting, which occurs this Thursday, 6:30 in the here in the council chambers, and the other one is the second public meeting on the proposed new sign bylaw, which will be again in the council chambers on November the 7th at 5 p.m.
Okay. Anyone else? Additional items? Mr. Ritchie.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'd like to update Council on our 2014 budget process.
Thank you. Ms. Coulter?
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a letter dated today from the County of Grey regarding the report on 12B4, I believe, on the bylaw to remove the holding provision, and we'll bring it forward at that time if appropriate.
Thank you. Any other members of staff? Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll be bringing forward a report that was dealt with by Council in camera this evening regarding legal opinion on the museum-related RFP.
Thank you. Any disclosure of pecuniary interest? Councillor Boddy.
Thank you, Your Worship. I declared a pecuniary interest in a matter that we dealt with in camera, as well as matter at 12B5 of the open agenda, and the two related bylaws that are at 18K and M.
That is noted. Thank you. Anyone else? Seeing none. Confirmation of the minutes, please, from October 7th.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor McManaman, that the minutes of the regular meeting of City Council held on October 7th, 2013, as printed, be adopted.
Thank you. All those in favor? Opposed? That motion is carried. A resolution moving council and committee of the whole, please. Thank you.
Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor McManaman, that the City Council now go into committee of the whole to consider public meetings, deputations, public question period, matters arising from correspondence, reports, matters tabled, motions for which notice was previously given, and other business.
All those in favor? Opposed? That motion is carried. We are now in committee of the whole. Thank you. We would like to ask if Councillor Twaddle, you're the chair of Planning and Heritage Advisory.
No, that's Councillor Boddy.
Councillor Boddy, you're the chair. Would you like to join me at the podium, and we will present some facade improvement grants to some very industrious folks. I'll meet you down there. Good evening. Our first facade grant is for a property located north of City Hall on 2nd Avenue East. It's currently the location of Owen Sound Community Living. Hallridge Holdings Limited is the owner, and the facade grant was given to assist with repairing the brickwork at the top of the front facade from the window arches up. You can see it on the screen here. The restoration and repointing of facade masonry and brickwork is specifically listed in the city's facade guidelines. Maintaining the structural integrity of our brick buildings in the downtown is very important. Thank you to Dr. Everett Hall for the work you have done to preserve the structural integrity of your building. If you'd like to step forward, we can present you with your grant.
I don't know whether it was fate or serendipity, but as my contractor and I were looking at the front of the building discussing the work, Councillor Bill Twaddle came along and reminded me of this grant, and it seemed like this was going to be very helpful to us in our project. I would like to acknowledge and thank Kim Wepler and the staff at City Hall for guiding me through the paperwork. I always need help with paperwork. And certainly like to thank Council for continuing to support this program. I think you're helping keeping the downtown area, I'm going to say, have a crisp, professional look, which means we're a city on the go. So thank you very much for your help on this project.
Thanks. Thanks very much. And next, I would like to introduce Mr. Neil Milne. Neil is here this evening to receive a double facade grant for the building in which Hewett and Milne Limited and the Owen Sound Academy of Performing Arts are located. This is on the corner of 3rd Avenue and 8th Street East. There we have it. The property is listed on the Owen Sound Register of Properties of Cultural Value or Interest, which identifies this property as having heritage importance. The Milnes have done an excellent job in restoring this historical building. The project included soda blasting the brick and removing the white paint over the windows, repointing and repairing the brick, and repairing the stone foundation. The building looks great, and it will certainly enhance the gateway to the city's downtown core. Thank you for this great facade improvement and for your contribution to our downtown. And I'll invite you, Mr. Milne, step forward.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. I would like to thank the city for the grant, and I should thank my sister Ann too, who started this process and did most of the work. I just signed my name. So, but it was kind of a decision. As you can see, the building was always red and white, and I thought, geez, we can't really change it, and we thought about it, and then I thought after Ann came up with the idea, I thought it looked nice, and I think it does now. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Councillor Boddy, and I'll return to my seat. You know, the facade program is one of those programs that it really is an investment that is a win-win for everyone involved. It's a win for the city, and it's a win for the property owners as well. I have to say, it increases the assessment a little bit, so that's good for the city too. So I thank you for your participation. And now I'll invite Colin Dobell, the founder and executive director of Stop the Drop campaign. Stop the Drop campaign has been ongoing for quite some time now, and if you would like to step up to the podium, Mr. Dobell, and give us your 10-minute version of where we're at now.
I was hoping to get a check.
I'm sorry, we're fresh out this evening.
We've done great work in making the water come back, and we thought we'd get a facade grant for that. I don't know if I, oh well, okay.
It's pretty sensitive.
Okay, good. Slideshow. Your Worship, Councillors, thank you for providing some time for us tonight. We would, you're probably aware that we have about 20,700 members that registered over the summer between May and about now with this online community, mainly because they wanted to have their voices heard on this issue of water levels. So the main purpose of us being here tonight is to respect that desire, make sure that you do hear their voices, and we're going to do three things. We're going to start by busting a myth. We will then provide you with some sense of where this organization is and where it's going. And we'll follow up with two suggestions, specific suggestions we'd like to leave with you, and perhaps follow up after this with staff to talk about what might be possible. The myth is a very simple one. It's raining outside, the water's up, and everything's okay. That is something that many of us want to hope and would like to hope. But it is actually, unfortunately, not true. Paradoxically, the water having come back as much as it has, which is great for all of us, has shown that this lake has a problem other lakes don't have. The other lakes, all the Great Lakes, are at or above their long-term averages. This lake is 35, 40, 45 centimeters, depending what day it is, lower than its long-term average. We won't get into here, what the reasons are and all those kinds of stuff. There's information available from our site and other places. But the point is that what the IJC recommended some time ago in the spring is in fact still applicable and still needs our attention, and that it is all of our duty to really keep pushing and keep attention on those resolutions, because if not, this, which happened a year ago, could happen again. It's, lest we forget, it happened once, it could happen again if we don't pay attention and follow through on those proposals. Okay, Stop the Drop has two objectives. The first is to engage the public, and that means all those guys outside that care about the lake, all around the Great Lakes, in key, and there are only 4 or 5 basic water issues that we believe sort of have the chance to really hurt us, and all of us, in a big way. We started in Georgian Bay because that happens to be where all of our founding people come from, and we believe very strongly that you care about where you come from. And we started with water levels because it was the issue that really hits all of us in the solar plexus. I mean, it's something that was so obvious and so evident, has a financial implication on everybody, and it hurts us emotionally. You know, we really feel it. The second thing is we're trying to help folks like yourselves and other levels of government and politicians get better visibility onto what the public thinks, what it cares about, what it knows about in this issue. The problem with environmental issues in general is that because there's little polling on it, it's very hard for politicians to really understand where the public sits. And what we're attempting to do is making the feelings and thoughts of our people, and your people, your constituents, visible on a much more real-time basis. And as we'll talk about in the end, actually make it possible for you to consult with them over time on these issues, so that it's something that you can get feedback with and therefore act more quickly than you might otherwise do. The idea is that you take that issue that matters to you, and this is a model we're also going to be approaching into other parts of the lake and other lakes, and in this case being the water levels, and you put a recruitment campaign against it, which is what we did this summer. You register people into an online community that is local. People have to feel like they're sharing the same body of water, that they care about the same place. So even though this, you know, the shoreline here is very different than the shoreline, say, up in Killarney, we all feel like we're on the Georgian Bay and we share that together. Folks, once they're in the community, have 2 real things we're trying to do with them, and that is bring them in at whatever level of engagement they're at on that hierarchy of engagement. Folks who just came in and signed a petition, that's all they thought they were doing, we're trying to get them, it's a win if we get them to read something. For folks who are already well informed, we're trying to get them to act or to speak. The other thing we're trying to do is provide tools for those folks to plug into their public representatives, their public elected representatives, and to do that in an effective way so that and to do it over time, to persist. Because the public's problem is it tends to get excited about something and then forget about it. And therefore it's hard for you to keep your priorities fixed on something unless we do too. So who joined this summer? What you see here is obviously the older generation is usually more represented in this, but the important thing for us is that there was significant representation from younger folks, and that as we get better in talking to them, that will improve. There's passion there, there's caring. It's just they haven't had ways of expressing it in the past. They don't like to come out to public meetings, for example. What we see is a good distribution of members from around the Bay. And what's important is that no one group, you know, dominated, and no one group sort of sees itself as excluded. Yes, you know, you see down at the bottom that Wasaga Beach and Collingwood were heavy hitters, but that when you look at population distribution, that's true as well. We actually are a little less concentrated in Owen Sound. Partly that was through an error in our working with the dock, where we didn't start radio as early here as we thought we were, because we thought the bottom, both Midland and Owen Sound, and it turned out that most of it went into Midland until halfway through the year when we changed that. But that really is, once that started happening, we actually attended your tall ships and a lot of your events, and that started to turn around, and I think can continue. We also have good balanced representation by usage type. And it's important that that be true again, so that cottagers or permanent residents don't see this as dominated by the other. And as you'll see in the bottom right hand, we actually have good representation in secondary usage as well, in terms of anglers and hunters, campers, etc. We're beginning to exercise the tools built into this platform to consult with and ask the opinion of our members. It's designed to be easy and fast, so people can actually do it when they come in each time. And, you know, 3-5 questions, very quick, in and out. But we're beginning to build, you know, insight that can be shared, and that technique is something that's going to be available to you if you choose to use it. This is a breakdown of where our members live and vote. And of course, what's important here is that obviously there are lots of folks who do and live and vote around the lake, as one would expect, but there's also lots of folks who don't. And that's important because if you take a look at the representation at the provincial level and the federal level, you need to get broader caucuses paying attention to this issue. If it's just a Georgian Bay issue, you've got three to five MPs or MPPs that you can talk to. As you say, suddenly you realize that you have 150 members in Deb Matthews' riding. You can get attention other places and get access to attention that you wouldn't get otherwise. We've broken it down by federal riding. We also have the same thing by provincial riding and municipality. We're going through, as I say, in the next sort of 45 days, we're going through all of the different MPs, MPPs, and municipalities around the Bay, but then we're going to be talking to folks away from the Bay, and that's going to balance out what hasn't been done before. What you'll see is we have the ability to enable you to see where your lake-carrying citizens reside within town. And that's something that as you get more members in this area, more represented in this area, you can actually start to see that with more detail. But you can also, and this is one that's surprised a lot of people, you can actually see where the people that access the lake through Owen Sound but don't live here, where do they come from? And you could actually find yourself in, if you wanted to initiate a conversation with people who come here to enjoy the lake but don't live here, you could actually have that conversation with them through this kind of medium as well. What we're doing next year, we're growing the Georgian Bay community from 20,000 to 30,000. We will be expanding to cover the entire Canadian side of Lake Huron, and we will be spending more time building engagement within the existing community. So 2 suggestions to leave you with, and I've discovered that different municipalities have different practices. I don't want to ask you for anything. On the other hand, I was told that if I don't put it forward, that sometimes no one will pay any attention to it. What we're doing in Collingwood following the meeting is actually sitting down separately with staff afterwards to just discuss what's possible and if this makes sense. So the first suggestion would be by cooperating on registering members to this, because it's free to use. No one gets, no one's asked for money. By cooperating, we could actually build the platform with more of your citizens and with more of your visitors that come through here that you could then talk to, because you can use the tools to actually, do, say, 3 or 4 surveys per year asking your questions of people who come to use the lake here but don't live here, for example. So if you worked with us, this would not be to our physical, monetary benefit, but it would be something where we'd get more members and you'd get more people to talk to that we could do sort of almost like a contra deal, something like that. So again, if that's interesting, I'd love to pursue however we talk about that. The second is there's a lot of money out there looking to help municipalities start to do adaptive planning around what the climate change is going to do to us all. And while we are not, stop the drop, we are focusing on things the federal government can do to permanently have impacts on water levels. We're also saying to communities that there's a lot of public out here who are impacted or who are going to be impacted as climate changes, because water levels are going to go bounce all over the place. And communities that actually line up and say, let's identify who's going to be impacted by this? How are they going to be impacted? Who's are winners? Who are losers? And what kind of preparation should we make to mitigate some of those impacts on our citizens and on our visitors so that when it happens, we're ready for it, as opposed to, So what we're proposing to, actually all the different municipalities, only some are going to take us up, but we could actually help the process of convening a facilitator. We've got some of them, of bringing in Conservation Ontario or other sort of out of area players who have interests in this. But it would only work if the municipality and your stakeholders in this area actually wanted to participate. And the idea would be to spend maybe 4 afternoons over a 6-month period where you actually sat down and said, what indicators do we want to choose to start reporting to ourselves and to our community that helps us figure out what's going on with water levels, both right now and what are the projections, what do they look like? And then secondly, could we build representative indices of marina business, of hospitality revenues, of tourist revenues, of shoreline real estate, the key economic drivers. And there's some here that I won't mention because you have a different economy than we do, than other people do. But the idea would be if we put those together and started reporting them, you'd begin to have information that would help you drive the bus over time. And that's the first step in adaptive planning. It's cheap, it could be done fast, you could get the ball rolling. So my hope is that you consider these, and I don't know how to put it to you. I don't want a resolution or anything, but I would be happy to come and talk with whoever is appropriate here.
Thank you very much, Colin, for your presentation this evening and all the work that you and Stop the Drop are doing. The presence that Stop the Drop had at the Tall Ships Festival was quite prominent and created a lot of discussion, a lot of conversations were happening at that particular booth. So we thank you for being there.
Good.
Maybe members of council who have questions or comments for you?
Thank you.
Thanks very much. We would invite at this time Diane Folds, Community Outreach Coordinator from the Owen Sound Museums, to bring us up to date on an upcoming event and fundraiser.
Oops. Trying to find it. It's just the one poster. Oh, there. Thank you. There it is. Hi, hello, good evening. I'm Diane Folds. I'm the Community Outreach Coordinator with the Owen Sound Museums. We're gearing up for another year of our one of our favorite fundraisers, which is quite successful and has been in the past 8 years. This will be our 9th year. So we're looking forward to having another fun night. It will be held at the Owen Sound Royal Canadian Legion at 7 p.m. And this year it's going to be on a Friday night, so that might attract some more teams and people that want to be involved. It'll be Friday night at the Owen Sound Legion. The Mix 106 will be sponsoring that. J.D. Moffat will be our quiz master. Doors open at 6 p.m. The first question is at 7 p.m. sharp. I've seen some of the questions. Katie McLeish, one of our staff at the museums, is working on that, and they're quite challenging. Well, they are for me. They might not be for some people, but they're a variety. There's some easier questions. So we've had quite a few teams already sign up for this event. And once again, it's successful. It's doing really well it's a great fundraiser for the museums. We have registration forms that are available at both the museums. It's $120 for a team of 8 or $15 per person. And there's prizes for the 3 top teams as well as the best dressed. And Rogers won the best dress last year. So we weren't one of those. And we have a lot of prizes, and I just want to say thank you to all the business owners out there, because everywhere that I've gone, since I'm the outreach coordinator, everywhere I've gone, people have donated prizes or gift certificates and whatnot, so we're really happy about that. And one of our event sponsors, or I like to actually, is Owen Sound Subaru, Mix 106, of course, and want to say thank you to the Owen Sound Legion for using their location.
We'll brush up on our trivia, that's for sure.
So sign up a team.
Now, I would expect that if there were people who phoned the Owen Sound Museums or emailed you, and they didn't have a full team, that you'd be able to help them sort of match them up with a table of 8.
Exactly.
So if there were 2 or 3 people who thought they'd like to join, but they needed a mixer.
Or if you have like 4 really, really smart people, or it could be a team of 2, you know, you could still win. You don't have to be a team of 8.
I'm not even going to touch that.
But yes. But we can help you if you want to be part of another team, that's fine.
We're very safe around this table, but we would love to be there, and I'm sure, as schedules permit, I'm sure there'll be members of council and I'm sure lots of staff who will be there. It really is it's a lot of fun. It is. And it does test your knowledge of Owen Sound specifically and of the area.
Yeah. Yes, we have a category for local history, and we've added another category this year, music. So some obscure music that J.D. Moffat is working on, so challenge you even further.
Well, thank you so much for bringing
Okay.
this to our attention.
Thank you.
All right, public question period. Are there any members of the public here this evening who would like to ask a question of this council?
Debbie, I'd like to say something just quickly if I could. There are several of us here that support the Stop the Drop solution. Here we are with the Yacht Club in Owen Sound. So just for those of you that know, we're very, very concerned. And we have contacted both the MP and MPP, so we look forward to your support too.
Thank you. Jamie, would you mind just coming up to the podium, and if you could just give your name and address for the clerk for the record? And if you say what you just said again, the people at home will hear you.
Nickel. Yeah. I actually am a taxpayer here in Owen Sound now, again. But I am a member of the Yacht Club, and there are 5 or 6 of us here from the Yacht Club, the Georgian Yacht Club in Owen Sound, and we definitely support the Stop the Drop. We're very concerned about water levels. We have, as a club and as individuals, contacted MPs and MPPs, and frankly, they're pointing in every direction, but nothing's happening. So we really would like your support on moving forward and getting some kind of public enthusiasm.
Great.
That's it for me.
Thank you very much. Thanks for commenting.
I think we're probably going to leave you as well now, so.
Well, you've certainly helped me realize why you are here, so I appreciate you speaking out. Councillor McManaman? Okay. Thank you so much for bringing that to our attention, and rest assured, Stop the Drop will continue.
Thank you.
Thank you. We do not have any correspondence items. We do have consent agenda, and the consent agenda has a variety of reports and business license applications, predominantly some planning issues. Councillor McManaman.
Thank you, Your Worship. Question for the Director of Community Services about the event, the concert, where is it? On November 9th, and I'm just wondering, that's not much notice for the users that may be displaced. I'm just wondering about if she could comment about that.
Through you, Your Worship, the report is coming forward now, but it has been booked for some time, so arrangements have been made. Bookings were done around the event. So while there won't be bookings at that time, the renters have known for quite some time.
Thank you.
There we go. Did you move the consent? Okay. We also have a few sets of minutes from the Downtown Improvement Area Board of Management, the Grey Sauble Conservation Authority. Councillor McMahon?
I would move those minutes and the consent agenda, Your Worship.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion on any of the items within the consent agenda? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? That motion is carried. We have a report from the Manager of Information Technology with regards to a request for proposal on desktop and laptop computers, page 100 and 101. Is Council's direction on this? Councillor Purdon?
I'd move the recommendation from the report that the RFP be awarded to CDW for the purchase of 20 laptop and 10 laptop computers.
Okay. Any discussion on this? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. We have a report from the city clerk with regards to the closed meeting investigator appointment and a recommendation that council provide further direction with regards to the investigator services. Councillor Purdon.
A question for the city manager. In the report it notes that she's had experience with the Ombudsman's office looking after these types of things, and I just wonder how often it's used that service or that approach is used in municipalities of the size of Owen Sound. The comparators are all local or neighbors.
Thank you, Your Worship, through to Councillor Purdon. This is usually generated from the public, asking for an inquiry of some sort. In Lakeshore, while I was there, we had 2 inquiries. Both were dealt with quite professionally and without incident or delay by the Ombudsman's office. So sometimes they increase with a particular issue or concern, but it is usually, I wouldn't expect with the very good direction you get from our clerk these days that you would have many inquiries.
Councillor Purdon.
Yeah, I think my question was is that the LAS service is something that the city needs to purchase, have a retainer. That is one of the options, as well as pay for the services. Whereas my understanding, the Ombudsman's office is a service of the government. It's not something that council would need to pay for.
That's correct. Sorry, I didn't get the...
And you've had positive experience with that option.
I have.
Further discussion? Councillor Purdon.
Well, then I would move option 2 from the report, that we appoint the Ombudsman's office as our route for handling these kinds of situations in 2014.
Okay. Councillor McManaman.
Thank you, Worship. A question for the clerk. So the real benefit of the LAS system that we've been using is that they are available then as a resource. Would that be the chief benefit? I know you weren't here when we started this, but I'm just trying to reach back as to why we went with LAS in the first place. And anyway, in your opinion, is it the resource issue?
Well, both the Office of the Ombudsman and LAS provide resources. Primarily, those resources are a library of past investigations that give you an understanding of how certain elements of the open meeting requirements will be interpreted. But in addition to that, for us, LAS has, because I've only recently become a clerk, they certainly have been very helpful in answering my questions. They've come here to speak with staff. So they do provide services above and beyond the investigation itself. The gentlemen who have the third-party contract through LAS, the gentlemen that run Amberley Gabble, do frequently do workshops for both councils and staff members on issues around open meetings. I don't know if the Ombudsman office does that. With a freelance person, generally a data bank of past information is not available.
Councillor
Sorry, just further, most recommendations, this would be, I guess, to the city manager, most recommendations come with a, with a recommendation that we pick one or the other, and I'm curious as to why there isn't a recommendation with this report.
I think you'd have to ask the author of the report.
I actually came to the city manager and advised that it was unusual and that I knew I was bringing a report without a clear recommendation, but without having had an investigation from any of these organizations, it's very difficult for us to determine who would be the best person to provide an investigation for us. So there is a bit of a shot in the dark, and I apologize for that. There's not a lot to go on.
I'm going to go to the city manager and then back to Councillor McManaman.
If I could, Council, perhaps a little history on this whole matter. When the Ombudsman's office was set up, I think municipalities felt concerned that they would be introducing the enforcer, if you will, to do investigations, and that might be more onerous than hiring an outside firm or a third party. And I think, I don't want to suggest that anyone was making the wrong decision, but I think that's why firms like LAS were felt to be appropriate. I'm not convinced that that's been the case. I think the Ombudsman's office has had a reasonably good track record in being timely and dealing with these issues in a fair-handed way and finding giving good advice to municipalities. That is not to say in any way that the LAS wouldn't give you good advice. It's not to say that some other option wouldn't give you good advice. From a financial perspective, the cheapest is the Ombudsman's office, and I can only relate to you that I've had good experience working with that office when there have been requests to come in and analyze our practices.
Councillor McManaman?
So just further, the financial impact is then $390 annually, and if there's an investigation, $1,800, assuming it's day long. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Van Alphen.
Sorry, it would actually be a little bit more than that, because the average LAS investigation they've indicated is about 18 hours. I have heard from some of our neighboring municipalities that their investigations have been longer than that. So it is just a retainer fee until they're needed, and then the costs are fairly substantial.
The other member of council? To the clerk, the opportunity to get information and to use LAS services, though, as a resource outside of specific investigations, that opportunity wouldn't be lost as a result of going with the Ombudsman for investigative services, would it?
The Ombudsman office does have a phone number that we can call. They may not be as specific as the LAS gentlemen, but they will provide some feedback for us on questions that are posed to them. So we will have the opportunity to still be able to interact with the office outside of a specific investigation.
Okay, and just to be clear, it doesn't have any impact on the scope of the city's membership as a member of Association of Municipalities of Ontario? Doesn't
not that I am aware of.
Trim or restrict any of the opportunities within that membership? City manager seems to be wanting to answer that.
LAS delegates to a third party, Amberley Gavel, to do this particular service. So it's Amberley Gavel that you're actually bringing in. We have a membership through AMO and use LAS for other matters. So they're two very separate issues, if you will. I would emphasize that if you are acting appropriately within the criteria set out in the Municipal Act, these investigations should be of no concern to you.
Truer words have not been spoken. What is council's direction on this item? Oh, yes. Thank you, Councillor Purdon. Are we clear on the motion? Perhaps the clerk would read the motion out.
That City Council opt for option 2, which is to appoint the Ombudsman effective January 1st, 2014, and provide notice of termination to LAS.
Okay. All those in favor? Opposed? That motion is carried. Thank you. We have a report from the Acting Community Planner with regards to a technical report on a proposed official plan amendment with regards to 3795 East Bay Shore Road. This is a pretty significant technical report. Councillor McManaman.
Sorry, Your Worship, could we get an introduction by staff on this one?
Absolutely.
Please?
I'll go to the Director of Community Services for this.
Thank you, Worship. The first thing I would point out is in the title and throughout the report, we've consistently referred to the property as 3795 East Bay Shore Road, and it should be 3195. So this report is a technical report on a proposed official plan and zoning bylaw amendment for those lands that are known to Council as the former RCA site or 3195 East Bay Shore Road. The property is currently developed with a large industrial building. It used to be the RCA plant. They made cabinets for RCA radios, and currently it's a warehouse, fitness, dance studio with, a variety of other uses. The report describes the surrounding land uses. The proposal has been submitted by the GSP group for an official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment. The application came in June 11th and it was deemed complete. We've given notice of that complete application and of the public meeting scheduled for next time. The purpose of this report really is to provide the policy framework in which Council will make its decision on the proposed amendments. So the OPA is really to redesignate the lands from industrial transition to residential, and the zoning would change it from the existing M1 with a special provision to an R3 zone. You'll see on page 2 of the report an illustrative site plan. So you'll see a comprehensive, well-planned, multi-use multi-density residential. We have singles, semis, a townhouse block with a central green space oriented towards Georgian Bay. There would be future applications for subdivision, plan a condominium, as well as site plan. A number of supporting documents have been submitted with the application, including a planning justification report, the functional servicing and stormwater, traffic impact, industrial land impact study for the redevelopment of site, as well as a vegetation overview. All of those studies are available on our website now with the notice. This report will be there as well. They're available for viewing here at City Hall during regular business hours. You'll see the report talks about the provincial policy statement, and anytime you're converting lands from industrial to another use, it's something called a comprehensive review, and the PPS plans for that, and that defines what a comprehensive review is. The industrial land impact study it meets the requirements of that comprehensive review. The city's official plan designated these lands industrial transition areas. So when we were doing the update of our official plan in 2010, we recognized that some of these industrial sites were sites that needed to transition. And we set in place policies at that time, 4828, and that will become a familiar policy to Council as we work through this process. And it talks about that certain lands may be appropriate to transition from one use, such as industrial, to another. And it establishes the tests in 4828, and there are 3 of those to be met to allow for an official plan amendment for that change. The industrial study that has been submitted, we worked with the applicant to prepare the terms of reference. That's come in. We feel that it meets the requirements of that study. So in terms of next steps, there's some detail there for Council in the report on the details of the zoning amendment that would be required. Next steps, we would have the public meeting on November 4th. So the application has been circulated. Comments are now starting to come in. Certainly we're happy to answer questions up until the time of the public meeting that we can. We'll hear from the public, and following the public meeting, bring a report back to Council. So tonight's report really establishes that policy framework. So the recommendation is just that you would receive the report regarding the OPA and rezoning, and direct the city clerk to prepare for that public meeting on November 4th. And I would note the change throughout on the address.
Thank you very much for that overview. This certainly speaks to the change that Owen Sound and many small communities are going through, and the transitioning of historical industrial uses to large areas of properties within Owen Sound shifting to residential. And it really does speak to the tsunami of change that Owen Sound is facing and that we're managing through. So what is Council's direction on this recommendation? Councillor McManaman?
Thank you, Worship. 2 questions. The first, how many, did you, perhaps I missed it, how many units we're discussing here? How many lots, if you will? Do we know that?
I don't have an answer for that. The concept plan is shown there. I haven't actually tallied up what the number of units would be with the condo townhouse, the number of row townhouses, but I'll certainly have that for the public meeting. Councillor McMahon?
Thank you. And my other question on, and I'm just on page 4 of the report, perhaps if the clerk could scroll to that map right there. It's just showing a highlighted portion as the northern part of the property. But do you mean the entire property or just the northern part?
Through your worship, it would be the entire RCA property, all 38 acres, so.
The entire thing, okay. And your worship, I would move the report, receiving the report, and then we move to a public meeting.
Okay. We have a recommendation. Further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? That motion is carried. Thank you. We have a report from the, again from the acting community planner. This is a removal of a holding provision at 3578 East Bay Shore Road. Councillor Wright.
I'll make that. I'll move the recommendation. At the, according to the recommendations that's there, and provided that A, B, and C are followed through.
Thank you. I'm going to go to the Director of Community Services. Is this, am I maybe a bit ahead here? This is with regards to the Grey County's letter 12B4.
So, Your Worship, these were lands that were part of an official plan and zoning bylaw amendment as well as a variance, and the applicant has submitted plans to allow for the development of these lands and for a single-family residential use. For that to happen, the holding provision has to be removed. Council had established certain conditions for the removal of that H. You'll see, as outlined in the report, that all of those conditions have been satisfied. The County of Grey comments that came in today regarding this application, basically they don't change our recommendation to you. I think they basically concur with the city's position, and we note in the report that the exemption from the county road setback is not required in this instance. So, and I think the Grey Sauble permit is underway, so we have those comments.
Okay. So the motion is, recommendation is, thank you for that update, recommendation from Councillor Wright as shown in the report. Further discussion, all those in favor, opposed, that motion is carried. We, yes. We could. Motion to receive the letter from the County of Grey Planning, Councillor Purdon. All those in favor? Opposed? That motion is carried. Thank you. We have a report on the sale of an airport hangar, C5 and C6.
There's another removal of holding.
Oh, there's a second. No, we're good. 12B4 looked after. 12B5, sale of airport hangar, C5 and C6. I go to the Director of Operations for any brief overview of what this, what impact, if any, this has on the leasing at the airport.
Thank you, Your Worship. Simply, this is a person at the airport has purchased an existing hangar, and so we're just simply transferring the lease over to the new owner's name.
Okay. Further discussion? Somebody like to move the recommendation? Councillor Purdon? All those in favor? Opposed? That motion is carried. We have a report on Small Rural and Northern Municipal Infrastructure Fund capital program expressions of interest. And I will go to Director of Operations for a brief overview of the recommendation, perhaps.
Thank you, Your Worship. We have the opportunity because we meet the criteria for this application for the Small Rural and Northern Municipal Infrastructure Fund. Criteria is basically a municipality smaller than 100,000, so we've met that criteria. Staff have met and reviewed various projects that have met priority and have been on our 5-year capital plan. In reviewing that and looking at the criteria that's specific in the application, we have identified at least one project, which is 3rd Avenue East from 18th Street to East Bayshore Road as being that project which we should bring forward based upon the funding requirements. The question we've raised to council at this point is, would you prefer to ask for the limit, which is $2 million, the cap on funding opportunity is $2 million. We can certainly submit the application requesting $2 million, or we could submit an application requesting half of the taxable portion, which is 1.1, which strategically we're wondering whether that might give us a better opportunity of being funded as opposed to a full cap.
Thank you very much. I might ask if you could just provide for council too a bit of background in terms of the recent announcement, the $2 million infrastructure contribution from the provincial government, and how that came through the M3 and ended up at this point.
Sure, yes. We did apply previously back in early 2012 for an application under the Municipal Infrastructure Investment Initiative, a different funding program that is basically across the province as opposed to this funding program, which is focused on smaller municipalities and more rural municipalities. We were originally had been indicated when the first review of the applications went through that we weren't successful. However, in the last, I think it's about 3 weeks now, we did get recent announcement that we have been accepted for that program, and we've received $2 million of funding for that program, which will be dedicated to our 8th Street East reconstruction project between 5th Avenue and 7th Avenue.
Thank you. What's council direction on the recommendation? Councillor Chamberlain.
Well, it sounds like we think that we might be more successful if we go for the $1,100,000. So I would like to put that on the table as our recommendation, please.
We often talk about a stable source of funding, and while this is a source of funding, it's not a stable source of funding. So we're grateful for the opportunity that's been presented to us, and yet it's still not addressing the ongoing need for stable funding for small and rural municipalities in Ontario. Is there any further comments to Councillor Chamberlain's motion? Councillor Boddy.
Thank you, Mr. McRoberts, or Mr. Ritchie. Do we have the funding to do the other half of it? Can we put together the funding? Is it going to be, are we prepared?
I'd go for the whole amount.
Through you, Your Worship, certainly, you know, if we have to come up with 1.1 million from the tax portion, if that's council's priority, we can do that, but it will take away from other works.
Thank you.
Councillor Wright.
Thank you very much. If, through you, then, please, to Director of Operations. Is the county moving ahead with this as well, or where are they on that? It's just, you would probably know, Your Worship.
Thank you for raising that question. Through you, Your Worship. The county currently has that project scheduled on their capital, 5-year capital for beginning in 2014, as does the city. We've been both carrying this and communicating back and forth with them on a regular basis. We did have some discussions with the county about jointly applying for this project. They've already identified another project within the county that they see as a higher priority that they wish to apply their funding for this similar application.
Councillor McManaman?
Thank you, Worship. I know all of council struggling here with that 50%, or do you apply for the whole thing? And the question, and maybe you don't know, but the first part of the process is you put in and then they sort of scope it down to see if you're eligible. There isn't an opportunity there to apply for the project and then scope it down from there? And I realize that's a tough question.
Yeah. Through you, Your Worship. Certainly the application, the expression of interest application, which is stage 1 of the process, does request you to identify the type of, how much funding you're requesting. So it'll be specific about how much percentage of the funding you're looking for. So for example, it will ask, do you want 1.1 million or 2 million? The second stage will reconfirm that, of course. I'm not sure whether you could change your mind between stage 1 and stage 2 and decide you want to up the funding once you've passed the expression of interest, but I gotta suspect that would be looked at unfavorably.
So you couldn't just put down 1.1 to 2.1 and with a little hyphen in between? That
No, it's very specific.
Councillor Chamberlain.
Well, I was just taking the advice that we were talking about, but I also think that that's really a good road for us to do based on all that new development that's going to happen out there around the RCA plant. So if we can get a new road out there, and if you think that's the best way for us to go at it, is to get the 1,100,000, I think that's what we should do.
Thank you. Go to the city manager.
Well, thank you. This is always a dilemma for staff to make a recommendation on. I would draw to your attention what Mr. McRoberts said, that we were successful in the first round. And with limited funds such as this, probably your chances aren't as great in the second round. So what we're trying to judge here is, would 1.1 million sort of fill in a gap that they had money left at the end of the exercise that they were looking for smaller projects? But, you know, it is a guessing game. We can't tell you with certainty which is going to be the more successful strategy. But I would say your odds aren't great in getting this at all.
All those in favor? Opposed? That motion is carried. Thank you. These applications are complex. We have a report from the environmental superintendent with regards to the LAS electricity program agreement update, and this is an opportunity to save money on electricity charges. Councillor Twaddle.
Thank you, Your Worship. I would move that we continue to purchase electricity through the LAS program, and I'm sure that the Director of Finance has anticipated this question, but how much money has this saved us in the time that we've been involved?
Through your worship, sorry, Councillor, I have not actually anticipated that question. But I can tell you they have been substantial, and I could certainly have a further report on that in 2 weeks. I can tell you our current budget for streetlight electricity alone is $200,000 a year.
Yeah, yeah. I'm trying to remember from last year's budget documents, but it's in the tens of thousands of dollars, so it is a significant savings.
All those in favor? Opposed? Can't imagine. That is carried. Thank you. We have a report from with regard to LED streetlights. And this is a Hydro One consent form for disclosure of information to a third party. It's fairly routine. Director of Operations.
Sure, thanks, Your Worship. I think this is just simply allows us the opportunity to continue to investigate LED streetlight options. They will basically provide us at no cost to us a proposal which will outline some potential opportunities, and in that process we just need to have this consent form through council and signed so that we can continue that process and continue to investigate that opportunity.
Thank you. Councillor Purdon?
So I'd move that we continue with that and the consent for the disclosure of information.
Thank you. Discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. We have 2 sets of boards, board and committee, for minutes for approval. Fire Services and Operations Advisory Committee. It's council's direction on these 2 items. Councillor Chamberlain.
I'd like to make a motion to accept the Fire Services one, and if I could make a comment. We did have a very good conversation at that meeting about the follow-up to the Meaford meeting that we had at Woodford, about the very good operations exchanges and sharing between the different fire services. Mm-hmm. And as you can see in the report, we got several points of where they are cooperating. And it was, so if I could, I'd just like to know around the mutual aid, the monthly chief meetings, the mutual aid meetings 5 times a year, the joint training, the equipment purchases of the personal flotation devices through all of them. And they also do the driver's licensings for the Z endorsements here in Owen Sound. So it was a very positive start of that cooperation in the fire area. And so I'd like to move the acceptance of those minutes.
Thank you. So further discussion on the Fire Services Advisory Committee minutes? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? That motion is carried. And we now have a set of committee minutes from the Operations Advisory Committee. Anyone would like to move approval of those? Councillor Twaddle. Discussion? Councillor Wright?
Just a question, just perhaps for the public, because normally we get the winter maintenance of sidewalks as a separate report, and it's come in the minutes this year, so that's changed a little bit.
I go to the Director of Operations. It's separate.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just for some clarification, this Operation Advisory meeting minute was a special meeting that was set up to review, or sorry, it was set up to review the sidewalk maintenance program. It also requested a subsequent report to come forward to the committee to review sidewalks, which was done at our last Operations Advisory Committee last Wednesday. Those minutes will be coming forward to the next council meeting.
It's a good report.
Thank you.
Councillor Burden.
Just had a question in terms of the snow removal. Maybe this is just an observation about sidewalks being plowed, and then the snowplow goes down the street on the county road and fills it all in. So is that going to be part of the general discussion about sidewalks and trying to coordinate the schedules between the county and the city?
Through your worship, certainly from a standpoint of sidewalk maintenance, we are challenged by having what we call curbside sidewalks throughout the city. This report was specifically trying to address the priority sequence for when we do sidewalks in particular. Absolutely, from an operational standpoint, we have to look at trying to find efficiencies to make sure that curbside, where we have curbside sidewalk, the road's cleared before we try to do the sidewalk. But it is a coordinated effort, and at times you can't coordinate it, but we certainly do an effort to try to do so.
Councillor Chamberlain.
I would just comment that I've had several people tell me how wonderful it is that the snow plow, even though some of it got pushed in, the snow plow actually comes and helps take it out, goes in and drops this wing and pulls it back out for them. So I think we have a lot of very nice things happening in our community around the snow plows, and I'd just like to pass that on.
Thank you.
Councillor McManaman.
Thank you, Worship. I know Councillor Twaddle is going to talk about the meeting about this issue a little later. I do think it's important for people to understand, first of all, attend that meeting or at least get the information from it. Last winter we heard a number of times that we needed to improve, or maybe prioritize is a better way of putting it, our sidewalk clearing. Unless we're going to increase the budget substantially, which I don't think we're going to do, we have to prioritize, meaning that some areas, high traffic areas, school areas, will be plowed sooner than they have been in the past. The downside of that is some areas will be plowed later than they have in the past. So I just don't, it's important that people understand the changes coming forward here and understand that if we add here, that will be great, but that means we're taking away from somewhere else. And the last thing we want to do is set it up to fail for people to think that we're improving the high traffic areas and still holding the same standard in other areas. That's not what we're doing. So I think it's important for people, especially those at home watching, to, if you're interested in this, concerned about this, know your have a look. There will be maps available showing where some of the proposed changes are. Have a look at them, understand them, comment on them, and then it'll come back to the Operations Committee and eventually to Council for decisions. So I just wanted to make those comments.
Councillor Twaddle.
Perhaps, Your Worship, this would be the right time to just reinforce the meeting is this Thursday, 6:30 in the council chambers. There will be maps showing the priority level for all of the sidewalks in the city. Councillor McManaman's correct. There were a number of issues that were raised last year. We promised people that we would review the sidewalk snow clearing, particularly because of those issues. I think staff have done an excellent job of documenting those concerns, setting out the priorities, and we'll be then designing the sidewalk snow removal routes based on the priorities that we've set out. But Councillor McManaman makes another important point, is that at this point, the council has not added any resources. So the snow removal budget in terms of personnel and equipment isn't increasing, so that we've had to reallocate those resources. We'll be reallocating those resources to meet the needs and the concerns that were identified a year ago. So it's really important for people who want to understand this and be informed to come out on Thursday at 6:30 here in the council chambers. There'll be an opportunity to look at the maps. There'll be a presentation by staff, an explanation, an opportunity to ask questions and to make comments, and look forward to seeing you on Thursday night. And would encourage all of council who are available to also attend that meeting.
Thank you. We have a motion to approve. That was moved by Councillor Twaddle. All those in favor? Opposed? That motion is carried. Thank you. We have one set of in-camera council minutes for approval. Moved by Councillor McManaman. All those in favor? Opposed? That motion is carried. We have 3 sets of in-camera meetings for receipt. Council's direction. Councillor Purdon.
Move to receive the minutes.
Discussion. All those in favor? Opposed? That motion is carried. We are at other business, and I'll invite Councillor Purdon.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. I just want to advise the public who's watching, and also council and staff, that on November 8th from 9 until 12, we're holding our second Welcoming Communities Forum at the Bayshore in the Shore Room. This is our second forum to look at how we as a community can be more welcoming to newcomers, and also to help us keep young people, after they've gone to school, to come back and to live here and help to build our community. We're inviting 3 communities to come and do presentations: Simcoe County, Renfrew-Lanark County, and North Bay in the region, who've had successful welcoming community initiatives, how they can attract and retain immigrants and newcomers. They'll be reporting on their successes and challenges. Their areas are very much like ours. We're looking forward to hearing about what other communities have experienced in attracting and retaining newcomers. It's a free workshop. There will also be opportunities for us to discuss and talk as a group, to think of a strategy for our community, how we can work together, not only in Owen Sound, but in Grey and Bruce as a region. So I'd invite everyone. People in the public would like to come. We'd love to see you there. And anyone in council or staff who'd like to come. And the city's also supporting this initiative, and thanks to the city as well for their support. November the 8th, it's a Friday, 9 o'clock till 12 o'clock at the Shoreline Room at the Bayshore.
Is this posted on the city's website as well?
I don't think so, but that can happen. I have sent out a flyer.
Is this a committee? Okay. That is certainly, sounds like a very exciting morning, and thank you for your work on that. Did you have any other items? Okay. Councillor Wright.
Thank you, Your Worship. I think 3 council meetings ago, the council instructed a letter to go to the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and a copy to the Premier asking if they would act on their commitment to us and have another look at amalgamation. I just wondered if we'd had an answer back. Did that letter go? I mean, I'm sure it did.
I'm going to refer to the clerk.
I can advise that the letter did go, and I can tell you at this time the clerk's office has not received any response.
Nothing back.
I haven't,
That's
I haven't seen
Thank you
anything.
very much.
Councillor Twaddle, did you have any other items?
I did, Your Worship.
Yeah.
Thank you. Just a reminder on November the 7th, that's a Thursday evening, at 5 o'clock in the council chambers, there will be a public meeting, the second public meeting on the proposed new sign bylaw. There was quite a bit of interest at the first public meeting and some really good information provided from members of the public. So this is a follow-up to talk about what's been incorporated. 5 o'clock on Thursday, November the 7th, which is 2 weeks away, here in the council chambers.
Mr. Ritchie.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'd like to remind Council and inform the public that we are starting our budget process for 2014. Our first meeting will be on Wednesday, October 30th at the Bay Shore in the Sound Room, starting at 9. We'll be reviewing the operating budget at that time. Our second meeting will be Friday, November 29th, again starting at 9. It will be held here in council chambers to review the capital budget and go over any suggested changes from council to the operating budget. Both of these meetings are certainly open to the public, and your staff has been working very hard on these documents.
Thank you very much for that update. And Wednesday, October 30th is not trick or treat. It is the start of our budget process for 2014.
It might be.
It could be. So we'll look forward to receiving all that information prior to, so council can be well researched on all we have to deal with. Ms. Coulter.
Your Worship, my item was received under 12B4.
Thank you. Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm bringing up on the screen now, and I've provided copies to the media and can provide paper copies to anyone else after the meeting if necessary, an in-camera report with a legal opinion that was brought forward for Council's consideration and that Council has requested be brought into the open session.
Thank you. Councillor Twaddle.
Thank you, Your Worship. This addresses a number of issues involving the RFP process for the rail station and the issues around the Marine Rail Museum. It answers a number of questions that have been put to council directly or formally or informally, and I think it's important that it come forward. And I would ask, if it's appropriate, if the clerk could just, for the benefit of anybody who's watching, just review the legal opinions that we received.
Certainly. Thank you.
Through you, Your Worship. The city solicitor was asked to provide an opinion ensuring that the integrity of the RFP process on the CN rail lands that's currently out and running until the end of December can be maintained. And that is with respect to some discussion around facilitated discussion between two groups that may eventually want to submit either together or separately to that proposal, or anybody else that may want to submit. There's also been of note in one of our past council meetings that a member of council is associated with one of the groups that may want to make one of those proposals. So the concern was making sure that that integrity is maintained. The other issue related to that was talking to the city solicitor about how to determine the ownership of the assets that form the collection of the Marine and Rail Museum. The city solicitor provided information on all of those issues, and I have 4 items of note. One is that the city solicitor speaks to the issue of the pecuniary conflict of interest which may exist. He indicates that that the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act identifies that where a member of council is also a member of another body that has a pecuniary interest in a matter that is brought forward to council, that could actually create an indirect pecuniary interest for that council member. And that in that case, that council member would need to turn their mind to Section 5 of that legislation, which indicates they need to declare a conflict of interest, not vote on the matter, and not influence the vote. The city solicitor was very clear that he's providing advice to the corporation as a whole, and that councillors on their own need to provide themselves with access to legal advice on a specific matter to determine if a conflict exists. Number 2 was respecting meeting with groups intending to submit proposals to the RFP process, and he's identified that that can create a significant risk of compromising the integrity of the RFP process. So in fact, in order to maintain an impartial and neutral face and process, that council members should refrain from interacting with potential applicants in that way. And if council did want to facilitate a compromise between groups, in this case the 2 groups that we're talking about that have an interest in the museum, that withdrawing the current RFP would be something that they should consider in order to keep that impartiality. And finally, the city solicitor has identified that the Marine and Rail Museum is an amalgamated incorporated body and therefore has the rights of a person to own assets, and in fact owns the assets of the museum collection, unless there is documentation that is brought forth that identifies some other ownership. They in fact have the ownership of the collection.
Thank you for that overview. Councillor Twaddle.
No, that's fine. I appreciate that. Thank you.
We have a motion to receive. Councillor Purdon. Councillor Boddy.
Given that we have 2 councillors that are away tonight, one in particular that is very much involved in this matter, that I would suggest, or I will move, that this report be tabled to our next meeting so that all council are here to hear it, review it, see it, think about it, and make comments that are necessary at that time. I'm concerned that if we pass it tonight, it could be overlooked at some point down the road. So my motion is to table it to the next meeting.
Certainly. Certainly fair in my view. To the tabling motion. All those in favor? Opposed? That motion is carried unanimously. Thank you. I have one item of other business, and that is to advise the members of the community and council that on Wednesday, November the 6th at 8:30 in the morning until 10 a.m., I will be holding a coffee break at the River Cafe in Owen Sound, downtown, and this will be the first of a series, an opportunity for members of the community who want to ask a question of myself, of city operations, of council. And I will be there specifically for that time period, and I would invite any member of the community who wants to have a conversation with me or ask me a question to come to the River Cafe at that time. And unlike a former councillor, I'm not buying the coffee, but I will certainly have a great amount of time to listen to you and hear what your issues are of the day. So that's coming soon, and there'll be more to follow. Move the committee rise, please. A motion, please, that the committee rise.
There's nobody here to do it.
That's what I was very nervous about. Councillor Boddy.
I guess since the table kind of leans this way, it would be normally Councillor Adair that would jump right in there without any hesitation, and so I'll be quite happy to move that the committee rises on his behalf.
Thank you. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. We're now in formal session. A resolution adopting the proceedings of Committee of the Whole, please.
Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor McManaman that the action taken in Committee of the Whole in considering public meetings, deputations, public question period, matters arising from correspondence, reports, Matters tabled, motions for which notice was previously given, and other business be hereby confirmed by this council.
Thank you. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Any notices of motion? New business by resolution? Thank you. Bylaws, please.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor McManaman, that bylaw numbers 2013-189 to 2013-202 inclusive be hereby passed and enacted.
All those in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you. We are adjourned.